All right, so, we're all about productivity here, right? But what if I told you that a key part of that is actually about saying no? It might seem counterintuitive, but I think this is going to be really interesting. We've been digging into this Forbes article called Saying No, How Successful People Protect Their Time and Focus. It's really got me thinking differently about how we approach our to-do lists and our time in general.
Yeah, it's funny. We often think about success as saying yes to every opportunity, every project. But this article makes a really compelling case for the power of no. Not in a negative way, but as a way to be more intentional with your yeses.
Right. It's about protecting your time and energy, which, let's face it, are pretty precious resources.
Totally. I mean, you can't be everything to everyone, right?
Exactly. The article dives into all these different strategies that successful people use to be more intentional with their time. And the first one they talk about is setting clear priorities. They mentioned Tim Ferriss, the 4-hour work week guy.
Oh, yeah, I read that one.
So he's a big advocate for creating a not-to-do list, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, I've heard about that too. It's kind of a spin on the traditional to-do list.
Right. It's like instead of focusing on what you need to do, you focus on what you're going to consciously not do.
It's about eliminating those tasks that are just sucking up your time and energy, but aren't actually moving the needle.
It's about saying no to the distractions, right? So you can say yes to the things that really matter.
Exactly. And I think the article makes a good point that before you can even create that not to-do list, you have to be really clear on what your top goals are. Otherwise, it's easy to get caught up in busy work.
Totally. It's like having a filter for your time and energy.
Yes,
Yeah.
a filter for your focus. And the next strategy the article talks about is all about creating boundaries. And they give this great example of Reshma Saujani. Have you heard of her? She founded Girls Who Code.
I have.
So they talk about how she has these monk mode mornings. Basically, for the first 3 hours of her day, she's completely off the grid. No email, no social media, no distractions. She uses that time for strategic thinking and tackling her most important tasks.
Wow. 3 hours.
Yeah.
I'll admit that's impressive. I don't know if I could disconnect for that long.
Right. It takes a lot of discipline, but it's about creating that space for deep work.
That's a good point. It's not about the specific number of hours necessarily. It's about the intentionality, right? It's sending a message to yourself that this time is important. It's protected.
Absolutely. And it can look different for everyone. Maybe it's not 3 hours. Maybe it's just 30 minutes in the morning where you don't check your phone. The point is to find what works for you and build those boundaries into your day.
It's about making that conscious choice to protect those pockets of time. Because if you don't, someone else will.
So true. Calendars fill up quickly if you let them.
Okay, so we've got clear priorities, we're setting boundaries, but what about those times when you actually have to say no to someone directly? That can be tough.
Right. And the article actually addresses that head on. They bring in Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V.
Yeah, I know Gary V. He definitely doesn't shy away from speaking his mind.
Exactly. And he's a big believer in being direct and honest when you need to decline something. Now, this doesn't mean you have to be rude, but it's about owning your no and communicating it clearly.
So instead of hemming and hawing or making excuses, you're just upfront about it.
Exactly. It's about respecting your time and the other person's time by being straightforward.
I like that. So it's not about being a jerk. It's about being respectful and transparent.
Exactly. And sometimes that can actually build more trust in a relationship.
Right, because you're not sending mixed messages.
Exactly. You're being honest and upfront, which people appreciate even if they don't hear the answer they were hoping for.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, it doesn't always have to be a flat-out no, right?
Right. The article talks about the power of offering alternatives. So instead of just saying, I can't do that, you might suggest someone else who would be a good fit or offer to contribute in a smaller way.
So you're still being helpful even if you can't fully commit to the original request.
Exactly. It's about being solution-oriented. And sometimes that alternative solution can be even better than your original yes would have been.
That's awesome. I love that approach. So we're being strategic with our no's, we're finding alternatives, we're setting boundaries. This is great stuff.
You ready to keep going? We're on a roll here.
Oh, absolutely. I'm loving these strategies.
All right, so we've talked about setting priorities, creating boundaries, but this next section in the article, it's all about really taking ownership of your schedule. They start off with this great example. Lauren Eskin, she owns Lolola Design Co. They talk about her approach to-do lists.
I think I remember that. She's the one with the 3 categories, right?
Exactly. So she's a big believer in starting each day with a to-do list, but she doesn't just list out tasks randomly. She divides them into 3 categories. Things that only she can do, things that she can delegate to her team, and then things that, well, they can wait.
I love that. That's so smart.
Yeah.
Because it forces you to really prioritize, right? Like, what absolutely has to get done today? What can I hand off? And what can I just let go of?
Exactly. It's like that old saying, don't mistake movement for achievement. You can be busy all day long, but if you're not focused on the right things, it doesn't really matter.
So true. And speaking of staying focused, the article also talks about Mark Cuban's approach to email. Because, that's a black hole for a lot of us.
Oh, tell me about it. My inbox is like a monster that never sleeps.
Right. So what's Cuban's secret? How does he tame the email beast?
Well, it's actually pretty simple. He only checks his email twice a day, first thing in the morning, and then again at like 2 or 3 in the afternoon.
Wow, really? Just twice? That takes some serious discipline.
It does. But he says it helps him stay focused and avoid getting sucked into that constant cycle of checking and responding.
That makes sense. Every time you check your email, it's like a mini interruption, right? Pulling you away from whatever you were working on.
Exactly. It's like this constant context switching, and that takes a toll on your productivity.
I'm definitely guilty of that. I'm like, ooh, new email, and then I get sucked in.
We've all been there. But the point is, Cuban's strategy is all about creating those larger chunks of uninterrupted time for focused work.
Right, because that's when you can really get into a flow state and get stuff done. I love that.
And all of this, it ties back to those boundaries we were talking about earlier. It's about being intentional with your time and energy. And speaking of which, the article also emphasizes the importance of prioritizing your personal time. They mentioned Sheryl Sandberg, for example. She's really disciplined about having dinner with her kids every night, no exceptions.
Oh, I love that. I totally agree with that.
Yeah, she puts her phone away during that time, and she doesn't even look at emails until after they're in bed.
It's about being present, right? Like really giving your full attention to the people and things that matter most to you.
Exactly. It's so easy to let work bleed into every aspect of our lives, but it's important to create those boundaries.
For sure. And, it's not just about big chunks of time either. The article talks about Sally Krawcheck. She schedules her workouts just like she would a meeting.
I love that. Because it's on the calendar, it's non-negotiable.
Exactly. It's like you're sending a message to yourself that your well-being is a priority.
Absolutely. And it's about finding those strategies that work for you, right? Like whatever it takes to make sure you're taking care of yourself.
Totally. Okay, what else did these successful people have to share? What other secrets are they hiding?
All right, well, this next one is really interesting. It's about decision fatigue. The article talks about Reid Hoffman, one of the co-founders of LinkedIn.
Oh, wow. LinkedIn.
So he's really aware of how many decisions we make throughout the day, even small ones. And he's all about eliminating or automating as many of those decisions as possible.
Interesting, because it frees up mental energy for the more important stuff, right?
Exactly. Think about it. What are you going to wear today? What are you going to have for breakfast? What are you going to do first when you sit down at your desk? All of those little decisions add up and can really drain your mental bandwidth.
It's so true. I never even thought about it that way, but it makes perfect sense. It's like wearing the same outfit every day, right?
Exactly. Or using a meal planning app.
Or setting up email filters.
Yes, anything you can do to streamline those low-level decisions so your brain can focus on the bigger picture.
I love it. So we're being strategic about what we say no to in terms of tasks and requests, and also how we design our days to conserve our mental energy. This is brilliant. Okay, I need more. What's next?
Well, speaking of creating space, the article highlights Whitney Wolfe Herd, founder of Bumble. She's really intentional about never scheduling back-to-back meetings. She always builds in buffer time.
Ooh, I need to get on board with that. I'm so bad about cramming meetings back-to-back, but I can see how those breaks would be crucial, right? Just to have a minute to process information, prepare for the next thing, or just take a breath.
Absolutely. Even just 5 or 10 minutes can make a world of difference. The article even suggests scheduling 25 or 50-minute meetings instead of the standard 30 or 60.
That's a great idea. Just that little bit of buffer time can make all the difference. I'm starting to realize that saying no is really about designing a workday that actually works for you, not against you.
Exactly. It's about having agency over your time and your energy. And that brings us to the last strategy, which takes this concept to a whole new level.
Oh, I can't wait. Bring it on. What's the final strategy?
It's the power of taking extended breaks.
Ah, yes. This is where we talk about Yvon Chouinard, the founder of Patagonia, right?
That's right. We're not talking about a long weekend here. We're talking about months. Chouinard would take months off every year.
Months. That's amazing. It's like he said no to the whole system.
He really did, and he saw those extended breaks as essential for his creativity, his leadership, his overall well-being.
It makes you wonder, how much we limit ourselves by thinking we have to be on all the time. It really makes you think, right? Like, what if we all gave ourselves permission to take a step back, to really disconnect and recharge?
It's interesting, isn't it? We live in a culture that often glorifies being busy, always being on. But maybe that's not always the best approach for our own well-being or for our productivity.
That's a really good point. And I think this whole deep dive has been a great reminder that saying no isn't about being selfish or lazy.
Exactly. It's about being strategic. It's about protecting your time, your energy, your focus. Those are the things that allow you to do your best work and live your best life.
Well said. So as we wrap up here, what would you say is one key takeaway, one actionable insight that our listeners could start implementing today to be more intentional about saying no?
That's a good question. There's so many good strategies here, but if I had to pick just one, I think it would be to define your non-negotiables.
What do you mean by that?
What are those things in your life, those activities, those commitments, those moments in your day that are absolutely sacred? Things that bring you joy, that fill you up, that make you feel alive.
Okay, I like that.
Once you've identified those things, treat them with the same level of importance as any other meeting or appointment. Put them on your calendar. Make them non-negotiable.
So it's about making a conscious choice to prioritize those things, to protect those pockets of time and energy.
Exactly. It's about saying yes to yourself, saying yes to the things that truly matter to you. And sometimes that means saying no to other things.
That's such a powerful reminder. We've gotten so used to saying yes to everything and everyone else that we've forgotten to say yes to ourselves, to our own well-being, our own priorities, our own values.
It's so true. But the good news is we can change that. We can reclaim our time and energy. We can start designing lives that are more aligned with who we are and what we want to achieve.
It starts with that one simple word, no.
Exactly.
Well, this has been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for diving into these strategies with me.
Of course, my pleasure.
And to our listeners, we hope you found this deep dive insightful and empowering. Remember, saying no isn't selfish. It's strategic. It's about creating space for a more focused, more productive, and ultimately more fulfilling life. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.